Welcome. Thank you all who've joined us today, and thank you to those who will join us in listening to the recording and viewing on YouTube. We're pausing today to review very slowly and contemplatively, incorporating silence to share our thoughts and experience as we move back through the initial slides that we are considering as part of this exploration of ideas, illusions, ideals, gathering our impressions that we can together develop a way of incorporating our intuitive flashes as we move forward as a discipleship group, endeavoring to dispel illusion.
As a soul, I work in light. Proceed slowly and with caution. And darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light. Steady effects. I work, and from that point, I never move. Cultivate the realization that eternity is long, and that which is slowly built up endures forever.
So let us each sound the protective formula using the sign of the cross of divinity. Thank you. Go ahead.
How can I, in my small sphere, be of service to the world? Let me, says Master DK, reply to these questions by pointing out that by thinking this teaching into the minds of the public, by expressing before your fellow men the teaching it imparts, and by a life lived in conforming with its teaching, your service is very real. Let the Om be heard right at the center of the group, proclaiming that God is all.
Do we find ourselves more and more thinking the teaching into our daily life? Do we find ourselves expressing in some way the teaching to anyone that we happen to encounter and the moment seems right? Are we gradually living a life that conforms more and more to the teaching?
And the recognition that there really isn't a smallness of sphere, that all works from the soul in thought, word, and deed are very significant to the whole.
This template of DKs that we are following in actuality in this series and in others, the goal and the purpose to know ourselves, to always proceed slowly and with caution, to study the effects, and to cultivate the realization that eternity is long, and that which is slowly built up endures forever. Aiming at regularity, we've moved now to a weekly gathering, realizing always that the true spiritual effects are to be seen in the exoteric life of service. Remembering likewise that psychic phenomena are no indication of a successful following of meditation. The world will see the effects and be a better judge than the student. The world will see us and the effect of that soul consciousness as it moves into and through our lives. But above all else, the Master will know, for the results on causal levels are apparent to the Master long before any of us are conscious of any progress. What Michael Robbins used to call the maps that we are given. Look at this map from the Constitution of Man that demonstrates the subplanes from the level of emotional idealism in the astral permanent atom through the concrete mind to the higher mind and soul vehicle causal body, with that great sort of shaft or column of white light rising through from the mental unit up to the permanent atom of the monastic plane and even up to the monad that we call the antakarana, where that is found as the soul, as the vehicle of the monad on the Buddhic plane. We have these qualities or sensitivities that are given to us along that trajectory from discrimination, spiritual discernment, up to the Buddhic plane of healing, divine vision, and intuition and idealism, those concepts that we've been dealing with. So ponder on this briefly. At what point is your awareness focused? Where is your awareness? Where are you noticing? At what point are you polarized, meaning where your soul consciousness is in actuality identified? And to what point of attainment are you focused? Where is your aspiration focused now? So you may find that there are 3 different points. And through meditation, attempting to resolve the 3 points and move through the Antakarana, the great column of light, to attain a new point to achieve in this particular incarnation. And in this process, we dispel glamours, we dissipate glamours, and we dispel illusions from the attitude and then the altitude of the observer. The goal being goodwill and the will to love. Love being that synthetic, inclusive grasp of the life and needs of all beings, and the gradual opening of the vortices of the causal body, and eventually revealing the inner petals of the egoic lotus that surround the jewel. Align with divine vision. Align with spiritual discernment. And bring into daily life discriminative knowledge. Yes.
May the power of the one life pour through the group of all true servers. May the love of the one soul characterize the lives of all who seek to aid the great ones. May we fulfill our part in the one work through self-forgetfulness, harmlessness, and right speech.
We can do no more than sense a fraction of some wonderful whole, utterly beyond the reach of our consciousness. A whole that at the highest angel or perfected being is but beginning to realize. When we recognize the further fact that to be conscious on a plane and have control on that plane are two very different conditions, it becomes apparent how remote is the possibility of our approximating more than the general trend of the cosmic scheme. Know thyself.
Know the point of awareness. Know the point of focus. Know the point to be attained. And know that we are all part of what Master DK calls the great illusion, and that we have garnered over the millennia many illusions related to the zodiac. And through our study of the science of relations, we're beginning to touch what is to be the new astrology through those studies. But in that process, we have to dissipate the glamours that are associated with this great illusion that have been assimilated by humanity and dispel the illusions that are still clouding our vision. And recognition of the fact that humanity is in reality the brain of the planetary deity, and its many units being analogous to the brain cells in the human apparatus. It is an incentive and an inspiring thought to aspire to be among the higher or more highly developed units in the brain of humanity, and then to work to develop soul consciousness in those who have not yet become awakened to that fact. And through this process, we expose the spell of illusion in which we are trapped by developing discriminative knowledge that informs what is called theoretical knowledge of the concrete mind. So we glean this theoretical knowledge, which I see is misspelled, typo there. This we glean from experience, our daily experience, our experience of education, our experience of culture, our experience of our own being in relation to family, community, nation, the world, issues that emerge. And it is developed through the practice of Raja Yoga. And let's repeat what we've covered in the next 3 readings, the progression in this knowledge and what the result is with a reader.
First, there is that knowledge which the ordinary man can possess, which perhaps is best expressed in the word theoretical. It makes a man aware of certain hypotheses, possibilities, and explanations. It gives to him an understanding of ways, means, and methods, and enables him to take the first step towards correct ascertainment and achievement. This is true of that knowledge which Patanjali deals with. By acting upon this knowledge and by conforming to the requirements of the intended investigation or development, the aspirant becomes aware of the light in the head.
Can you, in your own experience, note when you began this becoming aware of the light in the head? Was it gradual? Were there particular events that propelled you into this awareness? Thinking of your brain and your brain cells and your causal body as part of the brain of the planetary logos. When were you drawn to meditation? How were you drawn into the practices of Raja Yoga? The transmutation of the lower centers to the higher. Control of the lower centers, control of the astral body, and utilizing the light in the head to achieve that control. And finding others also engaging in the process of developing true awareness, that light in the head. God, the one, is love, so love is all in this solar system. When were you able to begin to be aware of that great light that we find as the expression of that great love, wisdom in this solar system?
Secondly, discriminative knowledge is the next type utilized by the aspirant. The light, having been contacted, is used, and the result is that the pairs of opposites become apparent. Duality is known, and the question of choice comes in. The light of God is cast upon either side of the razor-edged path the aspirant is endeavoring to tread, and at first this noble middle path is not so apparent as that which lies on either side. By the addition of dispassion or non-attachment to discriminative knowledge, hindrances are worn away. The veil which hides the light becomes increasingly thin until eventually the third or highest light is touched.
What was your experience of this razor-edged path and the light of God, this light of love and life, being cast on either side of this path? When were you compelled to develop dispassion? How did you create within yourself the observer and the detachment to what was discriminated, the discriminative knowledge, so that the hindrances could be worn away? How were the veils rent, hiding the light? Did you experience a thinning of the veils at different points in your own life trajectory? Did you observe others who appeared to have made progress in detachment aligning with them in group formation, focusing on the light as a group endeavor in service. Until eventually the third or highest light is touched, the process that many are engaged in terms of world service, serving groups, serving humanity now, enabling many to begin to touch that highest light in some way.
Thirdly, the light of the intuition is one of the terms which can be applied to this type of illuminative knowledge. It results from the treading of the path and the overcoming of the pairs of opposites, and is the forerunner of complete illumination and the full light of day. True intuition on the Buddhic plane appears in flashes of insight. Most ideas, when of a very high order, are stepped down into the consciousness of a disciple by the disciple's master and are imparted to the disciple through mental telepathy, and as a result of the disciple's sensitivity to the psychic gift waves, as the Tibetan teaching calls them.
Yes, Anna? We did not hear you. Martine shares that the pairs of opposites become less attractive. The pairs of opposites lose their magnetism, actually, on either side of the horizontal plane. When the vertical is developed and as the movement of awareness to focal point is achieved on the vertical axis, so many methods to do this. And generally, in my own experience, there'll be a call on the physical plane, expressed on the concrete level by another disciple who has put into form an approach in response to an intuitive flash and brings it into the concrete plane to make it practical for others to participate, to incorporate into their own practice, or to use this practical approach to elicit additional higher insights. And that's essentially what our process is to put something in a form that we can respond to, we can relate to, we can experience in some way together, and then bring the higher insights down to share.
Living is for all progression along the path of evolution using the science of aspiration. All progression in the realm of consciousness is naturally by a graded series of awakenings. But this would proceed much more gradually and cover a longer period of time than is the case under our present planetary conditions. So we know that evolution has been accelerated. This particular mode of developing the consciousness of the human family was initiated by the hierarchy during the Atlantean root race at the latter end of the fourth subrace and will persist until the middle of the next round, which to us, in our etheric physical consciousness, seems so far away. At that time, the needed stimulus will have been imparted, and as 3/5 of the human family will then have esoterically set their feet upon the path, and a large percentage of them will be in process of becoming the path itself, the more normal routine will again be resumed. The principle of becoming aware, fundamentally related to some sort of sensitivity, proceeds slowly and with caution.
Thank you, Martine, for sharing that. The image in her mind is that of the tightrope walker on a string. The string is the razor-edged path. And that reminds me that Master Dwal Kul said that Libra and Scorpio are the two most important signs for humanity in this stage of humanity's evolution. Libra, the image, is that of the tightrope walker on the string, the razor-edged path, and the point of tension that has to be attained, that focused, immovable will of personality, soul will, to hold to the midpoint and not fall not fall back, only progress forward into the tests and trials of Scorpio. And those who are beginning to set their feet upon the path accomplish that, and that reversal of the wheel that we call it in the science of astrology, through the energies and the challenges of Libra, and in Scorpio, as humanity is ruled by Scorpio. So this process is a long process in terms of what we think of as time. And yet we have set ourselves on the path and assume responsibility. I love the beginning of the fourth meditation, recognizing the equipment we've been given. Think about that. What equipment have we been given to hold steady at that point of tension? What equipment have we been given to maintain that balance and equilibrium, and then move into the tests and the trials? Warrior am I, and from the battle I will emerge triumphant. The principle of becoming aware, this sensitivity we're developing together, but proceeding slowly and with caution. And as Martine says, developing a sense of proportion, that quality, that sensitivity is required and must be developed so that we do not fall back and that we can be of some use, thinking these teachings into the minds of our fellow men, living the teachings, expressing the teachings through that sense of proportion. So just to remind us what a principle is, for we are in this fifth root race developing the principle of manas, or mind. A principle is that which, macrocosmically speaking, that, God is all, is being developed upon each plane of our seven planes, the seven subplanes of the cosmic physical plane. So we as humanity, as the personality of humanity, are in the fourth kingdom. This germ or seed embodies some aspect of the divine unfolding consciousness. So in developing the principle of manas, we are developing the unfolding divine consciousness. The bodies are evolving and can respond. This principle of manas, or mind, is a germ of awareness, carrying all the potentiality of full consciousness on some particular level of divine activity. So in these processes that we are engaged in over this long period, we are becoming aware and developing the consciousness of what is that? The fifth kingdom, the consciousness of the solar angelic beings, the consciousness of the soul, in a sequential and unrolling sensitive activity that makes this divine understanding possible and inevitable. My own awareness of this, given it comes from esoteric healing, actually began to come to fruition in the process of using the radiatory healing technique, aligned with the study, the intensive study over 3 years, where the group focused on this principle of manas, developing the mind that can actually lead us to the Buddhic plane and that level of healing that is on the Buddhic plane. So I think of it as the healing of the planet and the healing of the earth. This is just a reminder of the importance of Scorpio and the fourth ray, which is coming into manifestation slowly in its cycle of direct influence, and the opportunity for many to make progress and become part of the solar angelic kingdom. That point where the human hierarchy is located. And the importance of the planet Mercury. And remembering always that we are, in actuality, Devic beings. The 3 lower bodies, the elementals that we must control, and the Devic beings on our plane, and the great Devic beings, the solar angels, are those that we must obey, and the devas with whom we must cooperate. Keeping in mind we are in that cohesive, complete relationship through the second ray.
We previously could not, in our stage of development, conceive of our awareness as outside the planetary ring path knot. So often in our studies, one is apt to forget that it is not possible for any unit of consciousness within the planetary sphere of influence to conceive of conditions as they exist apart from the Earth, because that small planet is inevitably, for that unit, the very center of his known universe. And under the great illusion, the constellations, with their rulers and with their prototypal counterparts, revolve around the Earth. With advances in science and technology, we can now begin to conceive of outside the planetary ring past not. When man has progressed further and his consciousness is beginning to awaken to reality, the nature of this illusion will become apparent to him. But at present, this is not possible. That ancient occult truism remains accurate. Consciousness is dependent upon its vehicle for expression, and both are dependent on life and energy for existence. This remains an immutable law.
And this gives us such a wonderful incentive to know that we can awaken soul consciousness in humanity by our studies and through the expression and modeling of the values and the virtues, and bringing those into our daily experience with those we are in contact with, in the groups that we serve in, and bringing those to the highest level that we possibly can within those contexts, even to the point of the challenge that it is in our nations with the current aggressions in the world, and to stand at that midway point and to be with humanity through these tests and trials in a way that activates the altitude of the observer, and continue to work individually on dissipating our own glamours and dispelling the illusions that are part of that great illusion that has trapped humanity so long. So let's very briefly look at the aura again. The aura of any form of life can be defined as the quality of a sphere of radiatory activity. The quality and the sphere are the most important. And now, in the current environment in the world with all the aggression occurring, we see a quality. We know the quality of the elementals of the nation or the nations and the great institutions. We can experience that. We know it. And it is to determine the sphere of influence. So those within a nation, because their individual sphere is of the same nature and quality of the nation, those within the nation can speak to us. Particularly, I find this in the Soul of Nations snapshots that are given. Those who are on the path together working for the soul of their nation can express the higher qualities, the soul qualities, and also acknowledge the sphere of influence within that nation and also on the world stage that can be tapped with the hope of those qualities expressing soul quality rather than the lower qualities. It's a very interesting process that has been undertaken through the 2025 initiative, and you can find those snapshots are posted as recordings on the 2025 initiative website. But let's take it to a point that we need to be conscious of.
Aura. Am I aware of my sphere of influence? Am I aware of the qualities that are radiated through my aura? Am I aware of those who are drawn to me? Am I aware of the qualities of those to whom I am drawn?
One might do the daily review with these questions in mind.
In this threefold aura, or more correctly, fourfold, if you count the etheric vehicle, every individual lives and moves and has his being. It is this living, vital aura which is the recording agent of all impressions, both objective and subjective. It is this agent of sensitive response which the indwelling self has to control and use in order to register impression or to direct etheric or mental impression out into the world of men. Astral impression is purely selfish and individual, and though it may affect a man's surroundings, it is not directed as are the other energies registered. It is the aura which predominantly creates the effects which a person has upon his associates. It is not primarily his words which produce reactions, even though they are supposed to embody his reactions and his thinking, but which are, in reality, usually expressions of his emotional desires.
A little tidbit of information from a study done decades ago, but I think it's relevant. When I was working with organizations and doing communications and organizational development work, one of the little tidbits was that in communicating, in effective communication, was to note that the words themselves were only 7% to 10% at the most of the message or what people were impressed with. The impression came from what are called the extra verbals: tonality, inflection, the other aspects of communication that radiate from the aura. So learning that we not only need to be careful with our words, but we need to take care with our aura. to just briefly looking at the sphere of influence and the qualities radiated. Are you radiating that sense of proportion? What is magnetizing to your unification of the sheaths? Which sheath is dominant? Which sheath are others able to relate to and to meet kind of on the same plane? Generally, we consider the etheric physical, the astral, which is kama manasic, meaning a combination of astral and concrete mind. And the thought forms that are created with the concrete mind, are people drawn to that? Or is it the higher ideals and the ideas that you're radiating with this beginning illuminative transition, with the spiritual vibration coming forth? Not easy to manage, as Martine said, and it is always moving. And yet, are you bringing into your awareness, in your awakening each day, that your aura has shifted? And those of us who have experienced an illness or a surgery or some change in our physical environment and our physical capacity to relate to the environment we're out of sync. So how we care for that during our period of readjustment, and how to bring in the highest to assist in the tempering of the movement of any one of the sheaths. When we experience Maya, when someone is in a place that we can only hold steady for them, there's really nothing to say. There's nothing to contribute to their own struggle. It is a challenge to hold the mind steady in the light. That's our goal. And we get practice every single day, an opportunity to develop that strength of purpose and the midway point held steady as we transmute the lower. We're given in this reading from DK the 3 types: the health aura, which relates to Maya. It's essentially our physical relationship. The astral aura, for most, it's the most dominant factor. It's extensive and controlling. It relates to glamour, which we are in the process of dissipating. The mental aura, once we take our own development consciously in hand, and once the polarization of the personality is on the mental plane, this relates to illusion. So we are all dealing with these auras, which are elementals. They're the elementals that we're dealing with, that we are learning to control. Heike, go ahead, please. Share your comment.
Okay, my thought was that we don't manage to control the aura by watching the aura and trying to change it. But the way to change the aura is changing our thoughts and our emotions and radiation. And if we can watch the aura change by that, but we don't control the aura in that form that we take control over the aura, right?
Well, I guess, yes, I think you're correct in the way I interpret it. They use the word controlling the elementals. And for me, the way I do that is I use silence to control the elementals in my astral field. And I use the triple light that we use in the dispelling or dissipation of glamour. Those are my sort of mental control mechanisms, I guess, for me. And I think you're correct. We engage Davic substance of the higher, the soul, to assist us in that way of controlling. And I think we do, even in practice with those we're working with. I worked so much with children and with developing organizations that a stillness rather than a reaction was always evocative for the other. It was the stillness of my auras that could allow the other to, outside, the immediate range around me to become more still. An example of that might be, with two small children, where one was very dominating and very extremely aggressive in their words and tone, and the other child being more reticent, that the end of an argument was for them to sit at the table in silence and create a stillness within them so that they could begin to speak to each other. So that was, that's just an example of a very simplistic use of this, of stillness to smooth the astral field. So that's how, and I'm sure you have a way of doing that. We all do, to control the elementals.
I sometimes just visualize the opening of my heart. That there is, I believe, an attraction of the elementals to love, and I just bring that awareness of just opening my heart in an unconditional way. And it makes me sort of smile because with my children, when we were at the end of an argument, I insisted that they hold hands in that silent place. And it was always extraordinary to witness what would happen in that space. Often a lot of giggling and immediate forgetfulness and forgiveness, but it was, again, there was something connected to wanting to build the heart into that.
I think we can apply this even on an international level, in terms of the Maya that is currently in play in different points of aggression around the world. It is the need to create that point of stillness in withdrawal from the aggression, so that the space can be created to allow that love, the true, what is love, the pure reason, to enter in. And literally, I mean, think of international negotiations where the picture of shaking hands, I love that analogy of the children holding hands, and our ability to hold hands as the door opens to this true love, the expression of the love of all beings. And that our nations model these qualities of soul: humility, tolerance, patience, compassion, group love, all of those qualities of the soul. So, putting it in perspective in terms of the teachings again, Maya to be devitalized requires the higher throat center to be activated. Glamour to be dissipated, we engage the mind, the concrete mind, the higher mind, and the soul. And illusion to be dispelled, we activate discrimination and spiritual discernment. And the aura is in reality indicative of the centers. The sphere of radiation is a potent instrument in service, and its extent and purity of contact should be cultivated by the pledged disciple. The sphere of radiation is easily determined by those who seek it out and who watch the effect of the radiation upon people in their community and environment. Much to ponder when we do our evening review. So, do we have a deeper understanding now and a sense of the impact? Do we know what the aura is and how it comes to exist? So, we all carry this subjective mechanism with us. It is the true and perfect picture of our peculiar point in evolution. Just like to pause there and again think of our nations. The aura of our nation is a subjective mechanism which is the true and perfect picture of our nation's peculiar point in evolution. We know as individuals the Master is watching, And it is for us as disciples a major factor in our life. And the light of the soul within the aura as it grows and develops, and the condition of the various aspects of the aura indicate whether or not the disciple, and let's say the nation, is nearing the path of discipleship. Think of that. The light of the soul within the aura of a nation and the condition of the various aspects of the aura of a nation, the health aura, the astral aura, the mental aura, indicates whether or not the nation is approaching the path of discipleship. As the emotional reactions lessen and as the mental apparatus clarifies, the progress of the aspirant can be exactly noted. He says, distinguish carefully between the astral and mental bodies and that which they emanate. These are substantial in nature. And the aura is essentially radiatory and extends from each substantial vehicle in every direction. And as Martine noted, is moving in every direction. Think of the nations. Their aura is radiatory and it extends from each substantial vehicle in every direction. So communication from a nation is not just through the elected leadership or political forces of a nation. It is coming through the humanity of that nation. And what can be seen? What is generally seen, but only by the trained seer, is the Akashic record, the nation's portion or your portion of our planetary life, the life experiences of every human being since time began, the reactions to experience of the entire animal kingdom, the aggregation of the thought forms of a comic nature, and the planetary dweller on the threshold. Let's listen to this as it was recorded.
The trained seer has learned to dissociate that which pertains to his own aura and the aura of the planet, which is in actuality the Akashic record. He can distinguish between those Akashic records which are A. planetary, and B. hierarchical or pertaining to the work of the 12 creative hierarchies as they bring to concretion the plan of the Logos. The Akashic record is like an immense photographic film, registering all the desires and earth experiences of our planet. Those who perceive it will see pictured thereon 1. The life experiences of every human being since time began. And 2. The reactions to experience of the entire animal kingdom. 3. The aggregation of the thought forms of a karmic nature, which is based on desire, of every human unit throughout time. And herein lies the great deception of the records. Only a trained occultist can distinguish between actual experience and those astral pictures created by imagination and keen desire. 4. The planetary dweller on the threshold with all that appertains to that term and all the aggregations of forms which are to be found in its environment.
As we continue our studies of the science of relations and try to free ourselves from the thought forms that were planted in the Akashic record in Atlantean times and the consequent thought forms and symbologies that have been used, particularly at this time as we are beginning to be freed from the astral influences. Just like everyone to take time as we move forward through the signs to note which thought forms need to be released, those of a comic nature based on desire, and use the highest level of discernment possible in terms of incorporating what thought forms might be useful for you in your own development from current astrological interpretations. It's really important that we allow ourselves to be freed from these as we progress along the path. This is just a reminder that all the teachings relate directly to the science of the anticorona and the bridging that must take place from the physical to the vital or etheric body, and noting the two centers involved. This is really an extension of the life thread between the heart and the spleen. Then from the physical and the vital, regarding them as a unity, to the astral or emotional, the second essential relation. And this thread emanates from or is anchored in the solar plexus and is carried upwards by means of the aspiration, the science of aspiration, till it anchors itself in the love petals of the egoic lotus. Thus, the importance of dissipating individual glamour and group glamour for that point, from that point. And from the physical and astral vehicles to the mental body. And one of the ends of this is called a terminus, is anchored in the head, and the other in the knowledge petals of the egoic lotus, being carried forward by an act of the will. Thus, the importance of dispelling illusion. And was part of the impetus for the beginning of the series to open to the energies of each sign using DK's instructions on the new astrology, rather than using traditional approaches in any way and the symbols of the older approaches. So let's close today sounding together the mantra of light.
Radiance we are and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth, the inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus, with the light we work and turn the darkness into day.